Hello everyone, Ms. Fountain here, and we're going to go over Chapter 11, Lesson 2, Statehood for Florida and Texas. Just a brief reminder, before starting this lesson, you may want to pause the video so that you can go over these. So you want to look through these pages starting on page 400. You want to look at the title, headings, introduction, every first sentence in each section, visuals and vocabulary, end of article or end of chapter reading questions, and also you want to summarize all of these. And again, you just want to take a moment to do that to yourself. You just want to do that on your own. You don't need to write any of that down. So that way you just preview the reading. So that way you're more likely to remember more from it. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to look at the title, Lesson 2, Statehood for Florida and Texas. That tells me right off the bat. We're going to start off with Florida and Texas. I even see in the headings right here, Florida, territory grows. So the first part, we're going to start off with Florida. But then I see over here is a picture with Texas for visuals. So the introduction is going to talk about Texas. Let's see, I'm looking through the first sentence, the Alamo, Texas, and then here's Florida. Let's see, and again, talk about Florida here. And I'll look at the reading questions. Determining central ideas, according to the text, why were planters interested in moving to Florida? So we're going to look at why people are going there. What impact did the movement of planters into Florida have on the population? So all these people are moving into Florida. How does that affect the people already there? Number 2, making connections. How does the text connect Florida's request for statehood to the delicate political balance in the United States? So we have to pay attention to that delicate political balance. Look for that keyword balance. Again, looking at the picture again, visuals. While the Texan force inside the Alamo fought bravely against a much larger Mexican army, all 180 defenders were killed in the battle. Alright, so I'm on page 400. Lesson 2, Statehood for Florida and Texas. Essential question. Why does conflict develop? The story begins. The Alamo became the site of one of the most famous battles in Texas's war for independence. There, Texas held out against the Mexican army for almost 2 weeks. Colonel William Travis made it known that the Texans would achieve independence or die in the attempt. Quote, "To the people of Texas and all Americans in the world, fellow citizens and compatriots, I am besieged by 1,000 or more of the Mexicans under Santa Anna. I have sustained a continual bombardment and cannonade for 24 hours. And have not lost a man. The enemy has demanded a surrender at discretion. Otherwise, the garrison are to be put to the sword if the fort is taken. I have answered the demand with a cannon shot, and our flag still waves proudly from the walls. I shall never surrender or retreat. Then I call on you in the name of liberty, of patriotism, and everything dear to the American character, to come to our aid with all dispatch. The enemy is receiving reinforcements daily and will no doubt increase to 3,000 or 4,000 in 4 or 5 days. If this call is neglected, I am determined to sustain myself as long as possible and die like a soldier who never forgets what is due to his own honor and that of his country, victory or death. William Barrett Travis." So, again, as the picture said, that all 180 defenders were killed in the battle. So this was his last call for help, and help didn't arrive in time. So everyone, including William Barrett Travis, was killed, all the fighters. So I want you to think about what were they fighting for? Why were they fighting the Mexican army? What does he say about Americans in this passage? Look for the American character. What does that mean? What does that include? So those are all things to think about. Take a moment, I want you to think about again why people will be willing to fight and die for Texas independence. So over here, I'm going to take a look at the integrated knowledge and ideas. Read carefully to determine the key events in the war for Texas independence and later annexation. List those events on a timeline like this one. How did the institution of slavery affect both Florida and Texas in their bid for statehood? So here it says Florida, so we're going to get into Texas on the following pages. So we're going to come back to Florida for now. But let's look at the guiding question. How did Florida become a state? So we want to pay attention. What steps led to Florida becoming one of the states in the United States. When Spain transferred Florida to the United States on July 17, 1821, Florida became an American territory. Under the terms of the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, Florida had an appointed territorial governor, a territorial legislature, and a non-voting delegate to the United States Congress. Tallahassee became the territorial capital in 1824. The capital was located about midway between St. Augustine and Pensacola, Florida's major cities at that time. Not counting Native Americans, fewer than 8,000 people lived in the territory, including enslaved people. Later, as news of area's fertile land spread, thousands of new settlers streamed into Florida. So why did all of a sudden thousands of people start coming into Florida? What does the text say? Look for that. Many planters from Virginia, Georgia, and the Carolinas had worn out their soil with years of heavy use. They left their old plantations for new land in Florida. Here the planters established cotton and tobacco plantations, especially in northern Florida, and the narrow strip in the northwest called the Panhandle. In addition, small farms and cattle ranches dotted the region of central Florida. The leading planters of northern Florida played a major role in the government and politics of the area. The territory grows. In 1837, the census for the territory of Florida reported that 48,000 people lived there. Enslaved people made up about one-half of Florida's population. Officials organized a vote to determine if Floridians wanted to form a state. Only white men over 21 years of age voted in this election. These voters chose to seek statehood. New Floridians had to draw up a state constitution and submit to the U.S. Congress. So I'm going to bring up the word census. That is a count. They do their best. It is an estimated count. They can't actually count every single person, but they make their best effort to. And in the United States, we do a census every 10 years. The most recent one being 2020. But there'll be another one in 2030, 2040. So that gives us an idea of how many people live in every state. And that's used for important things like elections and how tax money is going to be spent, depending on the number of people living in that area. All right, so let's take a look over here. Florida voters chose 56 people to attend the Constitutional Convention in St. Joseph, a small port city on the Gulf Coast. The first constitution provided for a governor elected for 4 years and an elected General Assembly, or legislature. The Constitution also allowed slavery and called for a system of public schools. So, a legislature is the group that makes the laws. Each state has its own legislature to make state laws. Let's take a look at the next page. So look at this picture. The new capital in Tallahassee was chosen because it was about halfway between Florida's major cities at the time. This building was the second capitol, and it was in use from 1826 to 1839. The delegates approved the Constitution on January 11, 1839. Florida then sent the document to the U.S. Congress for final approval or ratification. Florida's desire to enter the Union as a slave state caused some difficulty. Congress had long struggled to maintain an equal balance between slave and free states. As a result, it would take 6 years for Congress to act on Florida's wish. Congress had to wait until another territory was ready to become a free state. This is going to become a frequent problem as we continue to study westward expansion as more states are added to the United States. This number of free states and slave states. So again, they want that equal balance. So they don't want to add Florida as a slave state and then have more slave states than free states. They had to wait until another territory is ready to become a free state. So statehood for California. Iowa finally emerged as a free state candidate. With the question of slavery removed, President John Tyler signed the Florida Statehood Bill. Florida became the 27th state in the United States on March 3, 1845. The next year, Iowa became a free state. Thus, the balance between the slave and free states in the nation remained the same in Congress. So again, they waited for Iowa to be ready to apply for statehood, so that way they keep that balance of free states and slave states. Checking for understanding. Number 1, explain cause and effect. What caused the population of Florida to grow? So again, why did all these people come to Florida? Number 2, what event led to Florida being granted statehood? Again, what did they have to wait for before they could be admitted as a state? Now let's take a look at this. We still have U.S. territories. Several of them you should know by now. Puerto Rico, Guam. We have a bunch of different U.S. territories, but they're not states. So just like Florida was a territory, and then they applied to become a state. So let's take a look at that process. Process, rules, and laws. Florida was the 27th state to join the Union. The 50th state to join was Hawaii in 1959, but that does not necessarily mean it is the last state. Article 4, Section 3 of the U.S. Constitution gives Congress the power to approve or reject new states. In 2012, the people of Puerto Rico voted to demonstrate their desire to join the Union. Currently, Puerto Rico is a self-governing commonwealth associated with the United States. Puerto Ricans are U.S. citizens, but because Puerto Rico itself is not a state, they cannot vote in presidential elections. Now remember, in presidential elections, they have the Electoral College, that point system I've talked about before. Each state gets a certain number of electoral votes or points. But U.S. territories don't get electoral votes, so they can't officially vote for president. So territories like Puerto Rico and Guam. Puerto Rico has applied, but Congress has not approved their membership as a state, so they remain a territory.